Yeah, well, we
You know,
got
we have
these
the
call
car
and there's
fixed,
people
and I
that
guess
call
the
in all the
guys
time.
who
They're
fix the car
worst.
changed
Yeah,
all
they're
my
the worst.
buttons, and I'm
But they
pushing and I
call
keep
in every
getting
day,
the
the
same
same
awful
people.
station.
Huh?
They're the same people that
Apparently
call in.
1,000, and it's a Chicago Heights,
Is that
Station.
Chicago
Radio
High Station,
station.
WCGO?
She's the one that's talking.
well, it was just awful. I don't
What
know
was
this
the
is on here.
program?
We'll discuss it, let her go with her program, but it was so awful.
Wow, so you're on
Just
television.
think
You're
about
on
it.
TV.
Did you call me here?
Smile.
Did you call me here?
Cheese.
I did.
It looks kind of wild.
I colored
Can I
mine.
get you this way now?
Forget the cheese, we
too.
want
Me
chocolate
too.
cake. Brown.
Brownies.
Brownie.
Our hair is natural. You know, theirs, we don't know.
Hi, Lee.
Hi.
Okay, that's 16.
Well, in the 1800s, there were quite a few German Jews that came over to the United States and started off in their business by just being peddlers and going through the country and trying to establish themselves. And at that time, there was several of them. One was Frederick William Strauss. He was born in Laufersweiler, and Solomon Meyer. He was born in Kirchberg, Germany, and they came over in the 1850s, and they ventured to the Midwest and finally to Indiana, and they made several stops, and one of their stops at Auburn, I suppose there was a proprietor there of a general store. The proprietor had a general store there, and I suppose they were talking to him, and he probably told them, well, why don't you go north? There's a town, they're going to establish a railroad going through there, and it should be quite healthy town. There's no stores there. So he probably told them that to get rid of them because he didn't want competition. So they ventured up to a small town of Ligonier. At that time had a 300 population, and they were peddling at first in the country around there, and then they established, Frederick Strauss established a little general store there, and the whole area was full of German Mennonite people. They're pretty trustworthy people, so they accepted Jews. And I can tell that by when we moved there in 1938, my father came there and he started talking to the Amish and Mennonite, and they accepted him, and he started doing business too, right off, after a short while there.
In German.
Yeah, they spoke German, and so it was easy to get their trust. And after a while, they were in business for a while. They prospered because they were pretty straight business people. And as the business prospered, he sent for his brother from Laufersweiler, David Jacob. And 2 years later, he came and went to business with him. Then he called for another brother, and he came a year later. And their general store became larger and larger, and in the meantime, the Solomon Meyer came with him, and he opened a competitive store, and he prospered too. And they got into different facets of business too, in agricultural fields, buying produce and livestock, and they established a big wool business there too.
Wool business?
Wool. They had big warehouses, and the town I think in the first 5 years it tripled in size because of their businesses. They hired a lot of people, when they were expanding, and then they went into a carriage business. They built a carriage factory, and they were quite the people, And then they,
We could build a temple sometime.
well, a little later, yeah, but first their business started thriving. And
That article that you had said that one of them wasn't Strauss, it was built the,
we came there, and all he did was play cards at the Elks Club then.
See, I told you, that's why I should learn.
And
So why did your
Yeah.
family go there?
I had an
particular?
uncle there, he came there and he had a dry goods store there.
1922 or
And
thereabouts.
he wasn't very successful. Everything was, Ligonier was kind of dying then.
But now
It
you're
got
talking about
revived
the
lately.
third
Revived.
generation already.
38, he said,
Because,
1938.
no, he came in 22.
My
He-
uncle Saul
His
came
uncle
at 20.
Saul,
But you came, your father
38.
came. in
but
38.
his uncle came, he had a first cousin there, Erwin Jacobs, who was the son again of it was Strauss's, then Jacobs, then Kahn, and that's the
Irvin
uncle.
Jacobs came to Chicago and opened a big mortgage company too, Irvin Jacobs Company. And,
What happened to their wagon company? Because with the Amish people, you would think that they're the
well,
more-
when we came there, it wasn't there anymore.
Oh, I see.
And
Were there-
they had a big garment factory there that some Jews owned, just line and things. They employed a lot of people there. At one time, they were largest employers in town.
Garment factory, you say?
Well, the Jews that owned several other businesses, if you go to Ligonier, they really respect, what the Jews did there. A lot of them were mayors and they were served on a lot of committees and town functions.
Does the town still remember that it was?
They've got
The impact of the Jews
There's a
there?
sign there when you
Because
come
now
in.
you probably don't have
This
any
was
Jews
the
there
side
at this
of
point.
None, there's not one.
None?
but
They're all in
this
the cemetery.
album and the synagogue is listed in the National Historic Register.
It's a museum, right?
It's a museum now, and it said the last service was in 1954. But in 1989, on September, the 100th anniversary of the building of that synagogue, they had a rededication. They dedicated this museum. These are lovely pictures that you have here. They're really
Thank you.
very interesting.
I took
Well,
them last
when they
year.
built that temple,
Listen to this about the, it's
that was
interesting.
quite a deal there. because
1889.
They had a smaller one, and then they decided, well, the population was growing, they built a larger temple. And they had such power at that time that they had a 3-day holiday. And they, when they brought the Torah from the other temple to the new one, they had a Ligonier band was there, and in a procession, they walked down the main street of the Torahs.
Not just Jews,
Huh?
not just the Jews.
And
Entire
the
community.
whole community.
It's on.
That's been quite,
At that time, what
Why
percentage
would
of
they
the town was
participate
Jewish?
in a?
15%.
Free food, beer.
And the Jews, there were 4 banks in town and all were owned by Jews. This little teeny tiny hick town had 4 banks.
It says they started being Reformed Jews as early as 1876.
Mhm.
In Germany.
Yeah.
Reformed Jews
Jews
started in
started
Germany.
Yeah, they wanted the families to be together instead of separate.
First Reformed temple.
So
The
this
article
was,
said that non-Jews belonged to the B'nai B'rith in
Oh,
that
yeah.
town, and
his uncle was very
That's
big
where
in Mason
the
and
non-Jews belong to the
Elks.
Bagric?
Yeah,
Where'd you read
Mason.
this?
yeah, he was the only.
Not the one that Ellen gave.
Well,
us.
the
Oh,
Jew-
did
Jews
she?
are
I
Masons.
must-
A lot
I
of
read
Jews
some of
belonged
it.
to the Masons, but then
I've got
they
it.
found,
What's that highest level?
33rd
yeah.
Degree.
But
33rd
then,
degree.
How come
but
you
then
can
in Ligonier,
convert
they
to
found out
Judaism over there?
that the Masons were part of the Ku Klux Klan. Quite a few of the members were of the Klan. And they had cross burnings in Ligonier. They burned crosses in front of Jewish homes.
Wasn't the Ku Klux Klan started in
Yeah.
Indiana?
I believe it was.
And then there were quite a few Jews in the Masons, they quit. And they went to the Elks, built an Elks Club there. And
Tell about the synagogue.
Yeah,
You started to tell about the building of the synagogue and who
Mhm.
came for the service.
and how much it cost.
well, yeah, and they had quite a few dignitaries from all over the state. You know, the
Rabbi
governor,
Stephen Mayer Weiss.
Weiss was there, and the governor was there.
Stephen Weiss from New York?
No, Isaac Mayer White.
Isaac Mayer Weiss.
Why do you try to confuse me?
Yeah. You
That
got the
temple's in
book.
Los Angeles, I never seen it.
And, well, they had some real good rabbis there. They had Dr. Krumbach when we came there, and he was one of the most pretty well noted rabbis from Cincinnati, from the Hebrew Community College.
Because they didn't have a permanent rabbi, they'd have rabbis come on the high holidays, and some of them later on became very famous, but
But
they
they did
came
have permanent rabbis earlier.
earlier, not when you
Later
were
on,
there.
they
The first rabbi earned $800 a year
Well, that year.
What year was it?
in 1881.
Well,
That was a lot of money.
Yes, wealthy.
Yeah.
1889, I'm sorry.
Still wealthy.
It says it cost $15,000, does that sound right to you?
Well, at that time, that was a lot of money for a building.
To build the temple,
Is this the
15,000?
You could
farm?
build a tremendous home for
But you have to
$6,000.
see the temple
It's all
and the
wood.
stained glass windows with, each window has, either Noah and the
but
ark,
they
or
were
Joseph and
donated.
the
The
coat of
windows
many
were
colors.
donated.
Is this the
And
farm?
it's just gorgeous. And there's a picture of the ark in there. It's beautiful wood, hand carved,
When did you take these photos?
last year.
Yeah.
I have
Were
some
there-
older ones. I have older ones, but these are the ones.
So
that
you
are
already went on the field.
And I remember when we came there, probably the Jewish population was down to 10 families.
In-
You got
when you
here in
came
38,
here,
it was down to 10 families.
10 or 15.
And some of those were yours, relatives of yours.
No, I only had one uncle.
Was that the only one who was there?
if you look in the back of the book, the last few pages, it says who was a synagogue member in 1889 and who was the last synagogue members in 1948, and Sixth Father was among them. And then it says the Jews that are buried in the old part of the Jewish cemeteries and the Jews buried in the newest part. And Sixth Father and his grandfather are both buried there in that blue brochure.
You know, when you
Herman
when-
Kahn?
Yeah.
When did your family leave Ligonier?
Ligonier,
Yeah.
when my father passed away, he was
50,
buried there in
55. No, 51.
51.
Yeah, he was
And,
And his
55.
Then I
grandfather?
went into service, and I didn't come back there, which probably I should have made a mistake.
Oh.
But
And his mother moved to Chicago.
Why? Would you explain that to us?
So when did the last Jew, were you the last Jew
No.
that were there?
Huh?
No.
Who was the
No.
last? how-
Durbin Meyer, that was this Solomon Meyer's great-grandson. Abe Meyer's son, it was Abe Meyer's son. Abe Meyer was president of the bank there when we went there.
Were Myers and Strauss, were they related?
No. They
Not
just
only
came
weren't
there
they
about the same
related,
time.
not only
They
weren't
hated
they,
one
Competitors.
another. Yeah,
say it again.
they hated one.
Well, I gather because
Yeah.
one opened the store, another
Yeah.
one opened the store,
The
one
bank,
opened the
the
bank,
bank,
another
yeah.
one opened the bank.
They were
They
and
could not
You would be
intermarry.
surprised.
Did I-
that
did I
those were some
misunderstand
impressive
you?
people.
You
didn't
When
say
I
that
went there,
Sid's
this Abe
grandfather
Meyer, I
was
remember
buried
him,
there.
he was president of the
His
bank.
father.
Big
His
man, I
grandfather.
mean,
His
distinguished looking
grandfather?
man.
And his
I
father.
didn't realize the
That's-
grandfather
Strausses
came to
were-
this country. I thought his
I mean,
father
they
did.
were-
but I-
Quite something, they were,
Ask him.
It says here the zenith was up the years, the decade up to and including
yeah,
1900.
yeah.
And if you drove through Ligonier on Friday nights, you could see the candles flickering in the Jewish homes.
Your
It's
grandfather came to this
That
country?
sounds
I
like
thought-
bursting out
I
of,
thought your
One at a
grandfather-
time.
See, at that
Fiddler on the
time,
Roof.
what was the percentage of Jews back in the early days? I mean,
15%
15%?
That was a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
for a small community.
Your grandfather also
Well, there were
came,
50
and
families.
was
He
it- I
died
knew
with
your
one.
father came
My,
to this
my
country. I
father
didn't
came
think
and he
your
died
grandfa-
when we went to Ellis Island.
And your grandfather came too? I think?
Yeah, he died on Ellis Island.
Oh, he
Well, so he
died
never
there.
made it to
Oh, so he never
Ligonier,
made it
no.
to Ligonier, okay.
He was ill. In fact, they really, he shouldn't have come here in a way, but they bribed
got
some,
through, even
they
though he
bribed
was
some
not
people
helping.
to bring him,
Yes,
you know.
yeah, I see.
His mother was very brave. She smuggled things. She paid under the table. He was diabetic. He was in a coma already on the ship.
Wow.
And she bribed her way through. She knew
What
his
year was
mother's
that?
sharp.
What year was that?
38.
April of
Oh,
1938.
here's that
Oh,
man.
That's when they
actually,
came?
Yeah.
Did they swear him in
1
as a
year
citizen?
before I did.
Tacoma?
Really?
5
Hey,
years.
Gretchen, it
Now-
says some of these
Another- oh, I'm
Jewish
sorry.
men married Gentile women. And
Oh, God forbid.
They could convert, but the real sign of their being accepted was membership in the Temple Sisterhood.
Have you paid your sisterhood dues?
Yeah.
Fess up, okay.
They had to convert.
Thank goodness.
That's it. That clears it.
They'll do it.
You haven't mentioned the Spiegels. The Spiegels
Now-
also
That
were
was
part
Joe
of that
born
whole
here?
group there.
No,
No,
No.
Joe was.
The
Joe
Spiegels
was a tiny bit,
buried
2 years
a
old.
daughter of
Get the
the
family
Strausses.
tree out.
Maybe 3.
And that
Eagles from Ligonier?
No, but he married one of the Strauss girls from Ligonier. That's another subject if you want,
Oh, yeah.
Spiegel.
Take her, what
Oh, I read that book.
Ellen's,
You're kidding.
please
Yeah, I
stop
read
doing
the
that.
book that was written by.
Gretchen's getting a good picture of you doing whatever it is you're doing, Ellen. That little purse dance,
His
no.
grandson, okay.
Oh, what
I
about
read
that?
that book, Paul
They
Cowan,
were-
that's the one.
Now, in the article that Ellen
That's an
sent out,
interesting book too.
Sit down and behave yourself.
If you think about it, these Strausses, in a period of 50 years, from peddlers to business people in Ligonier, to bankers in Chicago. I mean, that's just a short period of time to go
The
that.
country was growing so
But,
quickly.
well, they also, they know they had to be knowledgeable individuals.
Oh, of course.
I am thoroughly convinced of that. You
Well,
could-
they said that Frederick Strauss, he was an intellectual.
Yeah.
He came over and he was a historian, and he knew English language very well, you know, from coming over. He studied a lot. In fact, he was instrumental in building the first high school.
Well, we went.
that was Strauss with one,
They were
that's,
instrumental in
I don't think they're
helping
Jewish, frankly.
with the water.
Oh,
works
yeah.
there. You know, they-
yes.
Well, that area, they were
Jewish,
unusual
sure,
people.
Nat.
There was,
It's
Yeah,
with one
me
S,
neither.
with one S, you know.
Yeah,
it's,
one S, that's us.
One S
Oh,
too, I don't know,
oh, okay.
they are
Yes.
Oh,
Jews.
Nellie,
I wanna hear, where?
Oh, we stayed there in the Strauss home
The
in
Strauss home in
in
New York.
upstate New York.
Yeah. In the,
You know what the name of that Strauss?
I reckon.
Ligonier?
Not Levi, the publisher, with a G,
No,
it's a
that's
3
San
names.
Francisco.
Oh, God, it's on the tip of my tongue.
the,
Jeans, Levi Strauss.
No, this
No,
isn't them, though.
this is not
This
this-
is the
this is the
publishing
publishing
Strauss.
house.
Nathan?
No. You all know it. Farrar. Farrar,
Oh,
something.
oh,
yeah.
Jerome?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
That's it.
We saw the
We were at an
family
elder
portrait. They
hostel
look
and we
Jewish,
stayed at
I
the
mean, they look
Strauss
very
home,
Jewish.
their home.
And then they were
And I thought, did we
always
see one menorah
like,
on the old stuff?
this Jacob Strauss, there was a man working there, no one realized he was Jewish. He was working on a railroad named Simon Frank. And they went and talked to him and they took him into business with them, you know, just a stranger. So, you know, there were people who had a heart too. And this man really did very good and accumulated,
Tell me about Abraham Pancake.
yeah, they like him.
Yeah, the name, yeah, the face too. That doesn't sound like a
He's not
Jewish
Jewish,
name.
no.
Oh.
He
But
was,
Sig, I thought that the temple was sold to a church. and
it
now
was, and then the Historical Society bought it back and made a museum out of it.
When did
Oh,
that happen?
yeah,
Was
when
that
did that
after I
happen?
was there?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was after I
Where-
was there.
in-
See, now
about,
you got a good reason to go again, Lee.
about 10 years
There we
ago.
go.
Here was this man here. He was
Can I
there
tell
with
you something? About 10 years ago,
translation,
Lee
we came there.
and I and Sig went on a tour from the Chicago Historical Society, you know, at
Oh, you
Cutler.
were with me.
And we went to,
The
it was led by the Indiana Jewish Historical Society, Joseph Levine. And they led it from Chicago, and we had a whole bus full, 44 people. At that time, the Jewish Museum in Ligonier was in the basement of the library.
Right there.
And there was a church in the synagogue. Now the town has bought the temple back as a museum, and all the Jewish records have moved back into the temple, but it's not a Jewish museum, it's a Ligonier museum,
Everything.
but it's 3/4 Jewish information in there.
Oh, that's true.
I don't want this to get messed up.
It's-
There ought to be some Jewish
beautiful.
services in it.
It's beautiful, it really is lovely.
They
how
probably
they've
get
done-
regular
Well,
routine
you
tours
certainly
coming through.
take
That was a
it
smart
over. You're
business
having
idea
to.
too, probably.
Right on the intersection as you enter the town off of Route 6 and 31, the intersection, it says you are entering Ligonier, the historical Jewish community.
You didn't take that picture, Ellen.
It
Site
didn't
of an
turn
old,
out good.
it was the site of an old Jewish community, I mean.
Something like
How long has it been since we were there, Lee? What was
10 years, Ellen said.
Really? That long?
Has it been that long? I can't believe.
You
Oh,
have,
I
you
said it's
have
very new to
the
me.
Jewish
I mean,
historical, I left you the Jewish historical,
Oh, I saw that pamphlet.
Bulletin.
It's right here. Here it is.
I was very.
Is it this?
Jerry,
Get your
Jerry,
rented out.
Jerry,
Mhm.
Ah, yes, thank you.
Sig is still in 1889. He has a long way to go.
What happened? Yeah.
1985 you were there.
Pretty old, isn't it?
When was it?
1985.
Was it really? That's
What it says.
9 years there?
Yeah.
Yes, they're telling me. I said it was a long time ago. I couldn't quite remember whether Ellen was there or whether
Now,
I
this
was.
was when it was in the lower library.
No, wait a minute.
You
That's
still
the
looking
number.
at that little blue book?
No, that was the
Ellie?
library.
Ellie, you still looking at the little blue book?
There's 3,000 people in this town today.
Sig, how many people are in the town today?
About 2,000.
It keeps getting smaller.
Sal? Sal, do you remember them?
Maybe it's larger now. They have quite a bit of industry.
Now, the article said that there was no anti-Semitism. Was that your experience as well?
Not when I came there.
That article was written at the turn of the century.
No, not that
No, I
article.
felt that we got, had a few fights in school and there were people chasing you around.
Well, if there's Ku Klux Klan,
It
you're
was
welcome
the
there.
next one.
Oh, then that's,
When I came there.
no, this article.
Because they were, the Jews had lost their influence for that time. There wasn't much going on.
Well,
Sig,
that's one
can you
place
talk-
where the
Sig-
anti-Semites could say that everybody has, all the
Were the
banks
other
are
people
Jewish.
around here
I
the same,
mean,
though, the
without
Mennonites?
being
Did you say
wrong.
that were
Yeah.
there? Is that still
And all
a,
that
They're still
jewelry.
Common, Mennonites, but there's some anti-Semitism there. I mean, not blatant, but you felt it there.
But
Can you
it
get
was
your-
years earlier that they belonged to the B'nai B'rith and they marched in the parade.
Yeah.
Have they
That's
changed?
right.
People were all
Been
gone
3
by
days
the
that
time we,
I
that
mean,
was
it's quite unusual.
maybe
Lady
1800, yeah.
Whoa.
And,
These houses are really something in this town.
Oh, they were lovely and very.
By the way, if we would like to do, can I say something? If we'd like to have a weekend retreat, the house of Jacob Strauss and the house of Solomon Meyer have been turned into bed and breakfast. They are gorgeous. I looked into them. It's $24 per night, $48 per couple
Here's some
per night,
pictures of the
with
Strauss
breakfast
brothers'
included.
Hey.
And they have
Well,
them.
okay, now
You
for
saw-
sure we're gonna go.
Yeah,
You saw-
It's cheaper than staying home.
We'll go and stay overnight.
I can afford that.
We're gonna move.
It's a neighbor of mine, I didn't go there.
And you have to, the thing that I attached to what I sent out, you can't believe what the house looks like. Those are pictures of it, but carved, the banisters are carved pieces of sculpture. I mean,
Was that price though maybe 1985?
Yeah,
Just
Ellen.
quoted?
no, last year, 2
Last
years ago. Sig had a high school reunion, but he didn't go.
When we were there,
So you went instead?
one of the houses was still owned by the woman who, she was the wife of somebody who had died there, but I mean, his widow still had occupancy of that house.
But she's not
She's
there
now-
anymore. That's
she
Sig,
die?
which one that was.
Did she die, the last lady that was there, or she was the wife
All
of
right, Sid,
somebody?
let's continue on with the story here.
How many people could fit?
Let's see where we're going next.
It's a pretty big house. The house, how many rooms are in that house? About 14? No.
Jacob
Which one?
Strauss, it says
Jacob
14.
State of the 3 stories.
It says 14.
Is that the White House, that
Balconies
White House
and
on the corner?
There's
Okay,
a corner
nice.
in Ligonier called the
picture the
Piety
White
Corner
House.
because one house was owned by Abraham, one by Isaac, and one by Jacob.
That's right, I remember that
Those are their
now.
names.
Look at the confirmation place of 1990.
Very original.
Say, can you talk louder? I can't hear on the radio.
Fine.
She's telling you to stop talking.
You know who this guy
Okay.
See?
Is that you?
is?
Where?
Sig, right there.
I don't believe it.
Twin brother.
He knew you were twin.
Yes.
Manfred and Siegfried Kahn in 1950.
Here we were.
Oh,
at
they
the
think
parade.
Siegfried.
And Manfred.
I'm sorry,
Manfred's good looking.
but I can't get up. You have to come get these yourself.
Pass that
I'm
one.
not allowed to move. I'm being occupied.
My father.
Sig, how old were you when you arrived in Ligonier? Do you remember?
5.
Is that
Five, do you remember it?
Some,
Private?
yeah.
I will say this, if someone can help me fix the VCR and set it up downstairs, I got a film when we were there last year. They were doing all kinds of historical work. I have a film of the Jews of 1938 in Ligonier, and there's Sig and his twin brother right in it.
Oh, we must.
And his
Right
uncle.
there.
God.
I don't know how to, it is not attached to the TV, is that?
No, she means she wants
We've got it upstairs in the bedroom,
to
but
pull it out and then reattach it to.
Why can't we
I
all
can,
go in your
I
To
bed?
go up to the bedroom, it's a schwa.
we can all go up to my
I
bedroom.
can set it
Yeah.
up for you.
How
Oh,
does,
but can't we watch the TV too?
who was Simon Slosh?
You watch
This
TV.
is all being recorded, Mandy, you realize
Yeah,
that?
who wants to watch that movie? It's with a Jewish star,
Wait, I
Steven
wanna see that
Seagal.
before it goes the other way. That's-
Sid, you haven't gone through the whole
Who was Simon Schloss?
Megillah.
That's okay.
Who
Yeah,
was
it's
Simon
over.
Schloss
Pick
and
up where you left
Schlutz?
off, see?
Schlutz.
There were Schlosses there
Okay,
too.
just skip a little.
There are a lot of Jews.
Well, there's a lot of families there, yeah.
Today we were at,
And then when we came there, I knew the grandsons of the Strausses. Like Ike Strauss was the son of Frederick Strauss.
No, Simon, probably Simon J. or Simon.
You know.
It went, the elderly man, the great-great-grandfather of everybody, including sixth
Was Simon,
great-grandmother and Frederick and his brother Matthias and his brother Jacob, his name was Simon. So every other generation, there's a Simon Strauss. There's some Simon J. Strausses. When I went to the Spertus Museum and looked in the Midas book, sure enough, it has several of them listed because they all were entrepreneurs. All the Strausses went to Chicago and made their fortune.
It says in the blue booklet that they left Germany because of anti-Semitism, high taxes, and a desire for political freedom.
Yeah, they didn't get drafted.
Put that in the book.
And his mother,
They got drafted here.
his grandmother stayed behind, and they were the poor Jew. In other words, those that were adventuresome, these young men were 19, 20, 21, 22 when they came, you were young men. But their sister his great-grandmother was already married and had children. It was much harder for her to leave, where these young men wanted to get away. And from what my mother-in-law tells me, she was born near Laufersweiler. This whole family comes from Laufersweiler, little town in Hunsrück, south of the Mosel and west of the Rhine in Germany. And she was born in a town nearby, and they used to go to Laufersweiler a lot. They had cousins there. And she said the Strausses that she knew there were the poor ones. It was the ones who came over here and made the fortune that became rich. And now the cemetery in Laufersweiler, Germany, that we've visited is the most gorgeous. Laufersweiler is a little town, smaller than Ligonier. It probably is 8 streets long. They have restored the Jewish synagogue there. And the cemetery was more beautiful than any cemetery I've ever seen. They completely restored it. All the stones are in marble. The descendants of the families who lived in Laufersweiler, like the Strausses, and there's some other rich Jews who were poor in Laufersweiler, came over in the mid-1800s, made their fortune in America, and they sent money back, and they have restored the cemetery, they've restored the synagogue. It is now a museum.
And it lasted through the Nazis?
Yes.
No, after the war.
They did it after.
It was rebuilt after the
Afterwards.
war.
They sent the money back like in 1950, 48, 50, 50, 60. The cemetery, the old cemetery is destroyed, but they salvaged what they could.
Sig, that these early settlers, they didn't have to serve in the Civil War, huh?
They
That
came here
doesn't sound
afterwards.
like it.
It's followed
No,
that period.
No, they
it
didn't.
must.
18
According to this.
Oh, I thought they were here.
Well, I mean, they must have been very young.
No, if you read the article, they were there during the
The
Civil War.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were.
One of the Spiegels, who, a cousin of his, the one who married Strauss, who married a Spiegel, Marcus Spiegel, is written up in some of my work as a hero of the Civil War.
Grant did not want Jews in recruited. He put out an order.
Really?
Really?
It's all right, I don't want Grant.
I've seen that order and
I never. Can't believe it.
One of the Strausses.
They took blacks to put
Talk
in the
loud.
line.
One of the Strauss's grandsons was killed in World War One. I mean, he's buried in Ligonier with a monument, you know.
There's a
Grant,
huge
did
part
you
of,
do that with Lincoln in the office?
in the book, when it goes around, you'll see the Jewish cemetery. There's little stones, like Sig's dad is, like 18 inches, and then there's the Strauss Mausoleum with stained glass windows and all marble, and the Jacobs Mausoleum. Huge.
Do you think it matters now?
No.
We all end up in the same spot.
Right.
I don't know.
Rich and
Still
poor.
talking about it.
That's right. I wonder who this architect was.
Some people forget that.
But in the scheme of things.
See, what about the,
Can't take your toys with you.
see, What about the story, there was one part in your other thing where you were talking about that little brochure I brought back, the Xerox book of the town of Ligonier that tells the history of Ligonier.
Yeah.
Sid looks at his notes and he says, I've seen this before, so no point in talking about this. Saying, we were not there.
You're being presumptuous to say he's seen this before.
There's so much to tell, he's not, he really has a
He
lot.
already did, he told it a lot.
Well, keep on going. Bring us up to
We got the
1993.
historian here.
Well,
Jump
he
in.
lived through it.
Well,
You can only take us to where you
I
left.
mean, living there wasn't bad neither because it was a slow pace and they had a nice life there. They had a big town square and they had a beautiful bandstand there. And every Sunday, Saturday evening, they'd have concerts and everybody would go there, sit on the grass.
What did your dad do for a living when you first came
Like
to
in
Ligonier?
Stratford, they had this
First thing he
wonderful
did, he was a
gazebo.
janitor in a chair factory. He couldn't speak English, and he started pushing a broom for a year or two, and then he started talking to the Amish people that were coming through town, and he speak German with them, and all of a sudden he saved a little money and went out and bought a few cows and sold them, started a little business there, and bought a trailer, car.
Ended up being a cattle dealer?
Mhm. And then there was a man there, he was name of Ben Glazer, he was Jewish too, and when he came there, he was a peddler, and he started selling car parts and things like that. Eventually, he got the Pontiac agency, and several years later, he got the Cadillac Buick, and he sold all GMC products, and he made a fortune there, especially during the war.
And what was his title eventually?
He was mayor at one time.
He's the one that befriended your dad?
Yeah, and he really befriended my father. They talked to one, we'd go there on Saturday night and sit in his office and talk, you know. Saturday night was a big night in Ligonier. All the farmers would come in,
Yes,
and it would be social gathering, you know, everybody would walk down the street, up and down the street and talk. And
Did you have a movie?
he had a movie there too. And so he helped my father get financially. In fact, he helped us buy a farm, and you know, he was, well, he was a pretty generous person.
What year did you buy that farm? 41?
Probably in the 46, 47.
46,
Geez,
47?
you never think of Jews and farming.
Yeah, and we lived on
No.
a farm that milked
But-
cows.
My daughter's a farmer.
Is she?
But
You were
six,
farmers.
We had a farm,
They were
but that
farmers
was not the
now.
main thing.
but Sig's
Farmers
family in
and
Germany, the
and,
big thing was his little town where he came from, called Lützerath, near Trier on the Mosel River. It's a beautiful area. His father had a number of brothers, and they were all in the cattle business in one way or
No,
another.
not really. They
One,
were all in the cattle. They were, one had a restaurant and a kind of a hotel and a
Hotel.
restaurant, big building. The other one was a baker, had a bakery shop there. The other one was a butcher. And my father bought the cattle, and he was a butcher too. And, well, three of them were butchers, really, Leon and Sigmund and my father. Moritz was a baker and a restaurant.
This was where, this was in,
In
Germany.
Germany.
I can't even imagine how you start a cattle business. You buy a few cattle. What do you do with them? You
Yeah,
can't
go
bring them
out
home.
and somebody
Raise
lives
them,
on
pet them.
you have
Leave 'em in the
babies.
field? You
Your
hold 'em in
babies.
your lap?
You can rent a barn, and we're living with some farmers to take care of.
Alice, I know
Okay.
where there's a 187 acre farm for sale if you're interested.
I just want the cattle.
Would you like to come in the summertime and
You
visit
just
our
want the
farm?
cattle? And we'll be delivered in the
Your farm
morning.
is
Remember the time Alex and I almost bought a farm?
187
We're lucky
acres.
as hell we didn't. Jesus.
Now, your farm
It's a good
is in
investment.
Gilman,
We'll be
is that
doctoring to
right?
the cows.
Shermans.
Just
Which is-
south of
what,
Kankakee.
Well, how far is that from Gilman? Because
We're north of Gilman. You know where Kankakee is?
See?
We're just south of Kankakee.
well, I thought you had
Oh,
something
which
to do with
main road
Gilman
to
because
get
I
to
found
your
out
place?
there were some
Main
Jewish
road.
farmers
Fort
in
Governor's
Highway.
Gilman.
Huh?
What
We
highway?
can take 57.
I-57, you're off of that.
The
If I'm
the
not
third
mistaken,
exit in
Cyril
Kankakee.
Brownstein's
This is
father
exit.
was a, has a
Schuyler
farm.
Road.
You have to drive that far every
In
day.
Canada.
Oh, I go further, I drive 200, 300
And I
miles.
remember,
That's funny.
that was the first farmer I had heard.
Puts 100,000 miles.
Really?
Say
That's
again,
more.
Sal, I love your
I saw that,
back.
these cars.
You look better from the front.
I'll show you this
Off the
picture.
stage.
Sig, but in that brochure, the one about Ligonier, where you put all the yellow stickies, there were some things on each page that you said were very interesting.
Well,
Good.
like
Yeah,
this.
that's it, quote on dollar.
One
Yeah.
girl here, she was talking about growing up in Ligonier.
In the early 1900s.
Yeah, and and she must have been a very interesting girl. But she said that her name was Mamie Ott, and remembered the time when the Jewish people used to push carts to sell their wares. Many of the large Jewish homes on Main Street were already built when Mamie was a child, but many more Jewish families lived on the east side of town in the area where Mamie grew up. She remembers the Jewish families as generous, good, gentle people. You know, that was a nice attitude
Nice writing.
at the time.
She's not Jewish.
And she said that what they did on Saturday night, the trains used to go, they used to go and see the trains go in different directions down there, and that was an outing for them.
Watch it come around the bend.
And then they'd go to, they'd take, the big thing was taking a trip to South Bend or to Goshen and going to see Sousa's band. You know, entertain there.
Reading that one about a barn dance, oh, that just tells what you do.
These were Jewish kids here. A barn dance, hey, all you farm hands far and near, the rural district around Ligonier, here next Friday night at 8:30, come to Lacer's house where a hay rack will wait to take all the lads and maids to the farm and to an old-fashioned barn dance at Lacer's new barn. Where your old country does and your clodhoppers too, for a barn floor's no place for a stylish new shoe. And it's Cecilia Wertheimer, Mamie Lacer, and Milton Lacer. And their folks own that farm, the horse business there.
It's Loeser. I would know it.
Loser, in German it's
Loser.
L-O with the umlaut over.
Loser.
And you change it to an E in America, L-O-E-S-E-R, but there's L-O with the umlaut S-E-R, loser.
Yeah, it's hard to think back, well, those kids had a good time too,
Yeah.
when they were growing up.
Well, I would think with a hayride, you could really have a good time.
What'd you have in mind?
I'm interested in
Dance if
the
you want.
origin of the name Ligonier, which sounds,
Oh,
French.
Oh,
which
This-
sounds
that's
French,
in there
yeah.
too.
I know it had
It-
nothing to do
it's in
with the
the
Jews,
first
but.
few
Yeah,
pages.
like Pancake, he was a Calvin was a founder of Ligonier. He came from a town in Pennsylvania, which was called Ligonier, Pennsylvania. That's why
Okay.
he renamed
So
it.
this was New Ligonier.
What was the name of the founder of Ligonier?
Calvin.
Last name?
That was his name.
Calvin Pancake, is that what you said?
No, no.
Pancake?
Calvin or Caven?
Calvin, they named the street after Calvin Street.
Well, the street says
Yeah,
C-A-V-E-N.
Caven, it does say Caven and Caven House, I saw that. Unless it was a misprint.
Here, Cabin.
Yeah, Caven.
Mhm.
Isaac Calvin.
Read a little bit.
Never argue with Ally.
Now when it comes to spelling.
Disgusting, isn't it?
Never argue with any woman.
Never argue with any woman.
Ligonier was platted in 1835. Only 3 or 4 families lived in Ligonier in 1840. So you can tell how it grew pretty
Yeah.
fast.
How many families?
Now
3 or
it was
4.
10 years before Mr. Cabin's ideas began to take shape. Oddly, Cabin never lived in this village of Ligonier, but resided instead about 5 miles northeast of Ligonier.
He was a native of Ligonier, Pennsylvania,
Mhm.
born 1807.
Are you entertaining questions?
So how did Ligonier, Pennsylvania?
Go ahead,
I have a question.
I gotta go back.
How do they keep the Strausses and the Meyers apart? Did they have to teach you that you can't marry the other family?
Don't
That
forget
you
this
gotta stay
was-
away from
this was
them?
No, because they had a feud.
Instilled that into the kids.
Did
It's
they?
like
I mean,
the
did you
Martins
get
and
that
the
message to
Coys.
stay away from them?
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
I got there, they were
That
gone.
would
The
be
feud
great.
was over?
They were gone. I mean,
Oh, their feud
Well,
was-
Meyer, Abe Meyer was there, son of Simon Meyer. I knew him.
But they never crossed over and married in later generations.
No.
not like the
What
Romeo
actually
and
happened
Juliet.
between them?
Do we know?
I don't know,
What
it
was the
never
con-
says, they had a big falling out.
I can
Yeah.
understand that in competitive business, why. that's
Especially
it.
they were
In a
competitive
small
people
town.
You
too.
don't want any secrets to get out.
But in
Yes.
such a small town, it would seem difficult to keep up
One
that
opened
kind
a
of-
bank, the next one opened a bank,
Yeah.
one
But
opened a
they
Lucky
actually
store.
It was a
started out
copycat.
together, didn't they, in the same
Huh?
business? They started
Yeah.
out together in
Yeah,
the
they
same
started out
business.
is
But
part-
if you notice, a lot of these small towns, even in Illinois here, you go to Lincoln, there's a big Landauer store there established in the 1800s. Dry goods store.
What's
A
in
lot of
the,
the peddlers, as they moved through
Yeah,
the
they
country,
built-
they found
Right,
someplace
right.
they liked and they might have settled, opened up a store.
Right.
So
Sig,
you find a lot of that in the
In
small
small
rural
towns,
rural
yeah.
communities. Yeah.
Sig, what's the name of the grocery store in Bridgeport on 35th Street that still has the name on the
Yeah,
top?
but you don't know how old that is.
What's the name?
Con. Well, that's
Was it
in
his
Bridgeport,
family?
that's in Chicago.
Was it his
I mean,
family?
this is out in the country.
I mean, if you go on the, I see you see names of people that were engraved in the top story of
yeah.
the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I drive through the country here and I see these small towns, Jewish names, you know, on the,
Yeah,
in,
my uncle
on these
had.
stores in Marvel or something that they're. but,
And my cousin's family,
A lot of the
Kiwanis has the whole.
And my uncle had a store in Stratford, Ontario, you know, which was a farm, the farmers used to
like the
come in
places
there, and he had it was a dry goods store, but it had everything. I mean, you could buy a
Girl
mop,
there,
you
and
could buy a
General
suit,
store like.
a general
Yeah.
store. I mean, they don't really have that
Chuck
type
that
of
wagon.
thing anymore. It was a wonderful store. I loved going
Put your
there.
tent, open up a
With the
store.
famous saying, famous quotes.
Well, Target's a little different.
Oh.
Can I say something? I'm running out of battery. I'd like to,
Buy low, sell
Okay,
high.
good.
Or no, what was that?
I don't know what to say.
Yes.
my battery's running low.
I have that
In the
trouble.
Was
camera.
Sig?
Well, you had enough just the right amount.
I can't recharge mine. There's something-
You know, you could have a plug in the wall.
I know it's upstairs. I should go
Well,
get
there were
it.
quite a few Jews in the neighboring towns.
Go get the plug.
Kendallville, quite a few.
Fort Wayne, I remember them mentioning, a lot of them married girls, it seemed, in Fort Wayne.
Well, how
at
far
that
is
time.
Fort Wayne from
I
there?
don't know how far
Fort
it is.
Wayne's about 35 miles.
Was that
It was
the
right
big
between
city?
South Bend, 35 miles from, 40 miles from South Bend and 35, 40 miles from Fort Wayne.
Well, you answered the question that I've often wondered about when you talked about it, was how they settled in
Where did these pictures
Ligonier,
come from?
and then when you told the story that he was an officer and somebody sent him up there, and he said the train was coming or whatever,
Sit back.
and that's how it started.
St.
Now, Auburn is another little town in Indiana.
It's near Fort Wayne, yeah.
Okay.
And he probably didn't want, probably thought these guys are pretty bright, I don't want competition.
Yeah, we don't need another more store in
Send
town.
them down the road.
Hey, there's a railroad coming town, you guys might be too good there.
That's right.
Turned out they did better than Auburn, probably.
That's right.
This is a trench about.
So they went to the big city,
Auburn
found
is
someone to
the,
marry, and
home
brought
of
her
the
back to
Auburn
Ligonier.
Boxer.
Is that pretty much what they did?
Before my time, Roger. You may
Well, they-
remember that,
I
but I
think a lot of those
They
were
probably did
arranged
some
marriages.
advertising too for wives, I
Uh-huh.
presume, you know.
I wonder
in
if
these
they,
German publications.
Sure, that was not unusual.
And
Right.
and I'm wondering
That's how
if
you
some
got
of them
me,
were
didn't you?
arranged marriages, because if you
Sure.
read the newspaper, the articles,
High-class girl with
one of the
a-
women was from Nebraska, and a
Yeah,
couple were
Albia.
from New York.
That was a funny article.
Well, the one,
Yeah,
I crossed the line, right?
Yeah, I'll be on.
Wasn't it a riot?
She was so pretty and
Well,
that
like,
Culture, my parents came from Nebraska, so I know Albion.
But at that time, it's hard to vision that some Jews working their way out there.
Yeah,
Huh?
yeah,
In
right,
Nebraska, that's
yeah.
quite a trick out there, you know.
I kept thinking maybe she wasn't Jewish, but she was.
She was a widow.
No, not the one.
No?
We're talking about the person who married Jacob Strauss, of that
Yeah,
big house.
she was a,
She was a
she
widow.
married
Isaac Strauss, I mean.
Ike Strauss,
Yeah.
that was son of,
She had his son, and she was,
Hyman,
she was from New
Right,
York.
Jacob's wife was a widow, but her
Right.
son Isaac.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
he married someone from Nebraska.
Ah,
Is that
all
are
right.
those six
And
parents?
I knew her,
Herman.
I met
The
her.
wife?
Oh, maybe those, no, you're right. That's the way I go.
Did they marry Jewish women? How,
Yeah.
or did they, I think later on they started
Get off and exit.
really not.
Wait a
I
minute,
mean,
that's my
And
grandfather.
come this way.
they married women who weren't.
Because the distance from Middlebury,
Isn't his wife?
The Spiegels, as I recall, became Christian Scientists.
I was 6'3", 6'6",
Yeah,
6'6".
she does.
Wouldn't be a good red, a long way to go.
Left a couple. Not much.
Might be more interesting.
I think
Yeah, that's
Jeff-
true
Oh,
too.
look at her.
Seen her
Yeah,
like this.
and I'm not to eat those,
Those
I
would
can't
have
eat
to be-
sweets anymore with this hypoglycemia.
Really?
Just trying to
Yeah, whole life.
balance it, it's kind of a crazy thing. Well, I don't know.
Yes, that's
That's
not
what
too
it
far.
seems, and that's one of the things I have.
Oh, that's the picture of,
Twins, huh?
I am really, not a bad.
No.
2+ hours.
That's gonna be sick,
I
right?
consider that an outing, that's not bad.
I'm
The
not
idea of
used to
sitting
having
over
these,
at that
you know,
motel.
kinds of things to have to think about.
You gonna
and
drive
I
that
don't
far?
like it. I
120
just-
miles.
Not part of
Bad.
my,
Oh, no, that's not.
this is what
I
gets me
thought you
getting
said
younger
60
is
minutes.
about,
All the
I'm not
cruise
too
service.
thrilled
Six
with
hundred.
it.
60 each way? No, it's 120 each, one way.
Oh, this is you and Ellen?
Do you realize what would happen if we held a Jewish service at that museum? They'd have to change that plaque about the last
this your
Jewish
father?
service.
No,
Hey, that's a good idea.
I wonder if they'd allow that.
That's my.
We have to walk up and down the street.
I was,
Just, I wonder
I
if
was
they
in a
lost
temple a
hers.
couple of weeks ago that dated back in
Come on, brothers.
1850-something, six, I think.
Which one?
And in Madison, Wisconsin, we held a service in there. And it was, you know, this really old place was interesting.
Were they still
They
holding
had the
service?
klezmer band. It's a museum, but they open it for weddings and things. It's owned by the town.
Hmm.
And
Your mother was born con and married
it
con?
was
Con.
fascinating, the whole service.
Would
That's
everything say?
Can.
No,
Not
sorry.
even
Had a
close, not
klezmer
even distant
band in
cousins?
there.
No.
Dan.
That's a
Birth
coincidence.
certificate. This is fascinating, Sig. Now, how much of this do your kids know? What good is it to have all this wealth if you don't, where is she? I'm talking to her.
Kids probably don't know the first thing about it.
Yes, they do.
Of course.
Sure they do.
If you know Ellen.
If you know Ellen.
You know.
Listen, I know it, and I'm only a
You're in a
friend.
musical mode tonight, Alice.
Yeah, I better calm down.
You
I
know, we
remember
had,
for
man,
years.
we
Better
leave
calm
at
down.
11:30 a.m. after breakfast, and
I beg your pardon.
He's really pushing this.
I think
I had heard
Why- why
about
do you-
86
11:30
Farm
early
for many
breakfast.
years, but I
Just to
never
get
saw
this, you
it.
have a
One
nice
day, they
afternoon
took
of
us out to the
sightseeing.
farm. And
That's
there
a
really
nice
is a
drive out
farm, there was a
You
bull
pass
with
the Amish country, you go
with
by.
a ring through his nose,
You still see the buggies out
and
there?
all the
Yeah.
lady
and we used to
cows
leave so
there.
early so that we turn around and come back right after early
You
dinner.
know, when we lived there, they had around the park, they had where you tied your horses. And sometimes it'd be 100 horse buggies parked there, you know, Amish.
Oh, that's
And we
nice.
used to have a auction barn where they sold livestock right in town. And
Uh-huh.
these Amish would come there, bring their pigs or whatever they want.
Do they
Is
still
there-
use the town for marketing?
The Amish? Yeah, not, a lot of them go to, well, there are other towns there, to Topeka and things like that, but there's quite a few towns that Ligonier.
Are the Amish like the Mennonites? Is that the same?
Yeah, that's what it
They're
is.
related.
No, they're
The
not quite
Mennonites
the
are,
same.
are,
Certain area.
they're progressive, they have cars and electricity, but they still
Dress.
they dress
With the little
conservatively.
bonnets and
And
the-
their cars, they don't buy, they buy black cars, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that, but
There's
they.
a man, huh?
Because in Kitchener,
Now, the
in
Amish,
Canada, there is a Mennonite
they're not,
community, and they have a wonderful
they don't
market
hold
there.
cars and
They're a
all.
derivation, I think.
And
They
they
hire
dress
people,
like
right?
that.
Well, they originally
And
came from
I-
the same source, and they
Yeah.
kind of separate like
Mhm.
Reform and
Right.
Orthodox.
And Kitchener is a very German
I
town.
guess that's it, Mennonites are Reform Amish.
Is that what they are? I
Yeah.
didn't know
Right,
that. I
right.
know the little
Yeah,
children wear
that's
the
it.
bonnets
That's
and
right.
that they look,
That's
and they're
Amish.
very honest. I mean, you
I
go
was
there and
wondering.
if
Oh,
there's,
they're
the
like
egg
everybody
isn't,
else.
Identity.
Don't
if
let
the
'em-
egg
don't
isn't
let that
fresh,
beard
don't
fool
buy
you.
that
Yeah,
egg.
well,
No, that, my
that's
grandmother
right.
always said they were extremely honest. They
They're-
tell you
they're like
the
everybody
egg is
else.
not fresh and. No, it isn't that long.
How come I can't find you?
No, it'd
But
be
you
make
got,
a nice
you got
outfit.
it headed up to the ceiling.
As long as somebody else is driving.
Weekend.
Yeah, we could rent a big van or something.
That's nothing, I drove back and forth from Michigan by myself, 250 miles,
Who would have
120
to?
miles, a drop in a
Well,
bucket.
one could do it, but I don't like to do it. I used to drive to Michigan
I'd
State,
get
we've
out
got
some
went to
vans.
Michigan State.
I don't know.
And that was the extent of my endurance.
So what was the name of the
That's why
hotel
I
we
wanna
stayed
drive.
at? There was
Where
a
you
hotel we
stayed?
stayed at. What was the name of that hotel? She
shared
owned it,
that.
the
Yeah,
one
we
from
could
New
see
York.
it would be-
Leona?
Of course I
Leona.
can.
Yeah.
One
What's
day,
her
I
last
can't
name?
I can't
Ellsley.
Helmsley, that's right.
Oh, it's not called.
And she
it's
would
not-
sign it,
Shoot
Leona
mine down
Helmsley,
the
and I
other
never
side.
heard
It's
of
not
it.
called Helmsley Hotel.
Saturday.
It probably,
and we
it's
turn
not
around
the
Monday
Helmsley
morning.
Hotel.
It's not called the Hemsley Hotel then. It's something else.
That would be fine.
It was right in the middle of, you know, right off the campus there someplace, not far.
Well, the campus, the regular campus,
It's
so how
like maybe they changed the name of it.
It looks like she's
Looks
taking
like it's
so low.
working, Ellen. I don't know
What
what
are you
job
taking?
you- Rita.
Is your younger daughter a doctor?
My middle.
Your middle doctor is
Youngest
a-
Little doctor is a daughter?
The
The
youngest
youngest
one's an
one's a
attorney.
lawyer.
Well, what are we gonna draw from this? This Jewish community that's flourished and is gone, like,
Yeah, why did
Going to
Well, that's
visit,
an
we're going to
interesting
visit.
question.
Why
nobody made
grew
their
up
names.
the younger ones
The children.
Never came back.
left and went to school.
Decided there wasn't enough
the
of
world's a bigger world?
And the strange thing about it too, I remember the great-grandchildren of these Strausses. One was named Mortimer and
You're on the tree.
Bob, and they weren't very successful at all. They tried different things. One tried the oil business, distributorship, and they came back to Ligonier and just, you know, it was difficult for them. And they left again, and I don't know of any of them that were as successful as, you know, their grandparents or their parents were.
It's just like in Germany. Those that came early in the 1850s became successful. Those that stayed behind in Germany didn't. And the same thing in the little town. Those that stayed behind the little town didn't prosper as much as those that went on to the big city.
Well, the one, he became a vice president of Inland Steel here.
That's not too shabby.
That's fair.
Which one is that?
Which one was
That's
that?
not too shabby. Was that,
Joseph Block?
No.
Wow.
No,
There
no.
was blocks and I see
Yeah, the
there were blocks
blocks.
in town.
What was his name? Where's that
Blocks and
family tree?
Ligonier.
So what is the
Well,
lesson
come
of
from there originally, it's
Ligonier?
possible, the blocks.
And it's quite possible to have a community where Jews are tolerated,
Well, the
but
lesson,
eventually the Jews get tired of it, they move out, and therefore.
Don't let your kids go to college.
Exactly.
That's
Never
the
come
answer.
back.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
the lesson
Carl
is that you
Jacobs.
should have
Well,
been there in
that's what-
1850.
That
That
is
was the
what,
time
that
to be
is what
there.
happened. The children went
Jacobs
away to
went
school and
to,
didn't want to
now
come
that I think
back.
about it.
I seem to
Just
remember.
like our
yeah.
kids.
That's Strauss.
Yeah.
Boys, 3 boys.
Or have
Right?
a good supply of beautiful women around
Well,
America.
my uncle moved from Stratford when the children got older because he felt they would have more things in Toronto, so everybody moved to Toronto.
Well, look where your kids are, your kids are
Same thing.
California and,
Oregon and Hawaii.
now see, now, that's as far as you want to get.
Well, you
You
should
can't
go
get
to
much
Alaska.
further, Manny, my God.
California, Nevada, and Florida.
The one who went to
Florida,
Hawaii, I think that was a
Indiana,
good
and
choice.
Chicago.
Oregon, I don't know.
Well, I guess we're blessed,
Yes, you are.
You were,
Look, here's Ligonier.
which
How did that
it's
happen?
very meaningful to
You
me.
didn't
your
go
kids
They
out
have,
of
they're
state
all
for
here.
Oh, they are, you're
Yeah,
lucky.
we're very
I'm really
grateful.
mean, and that,
They are
it means
all
so
here.
much to me,
Oh,
because I can spend time with them and they come over.
Is Burl still
One of the
being
things
I
part
don't know, when
of
you get a little older, it's just.
Burl's
you really
older,
don't
she's
know.
married.
Seriously, I appreciate those
She
things.
married a wonderful boy.
Oh, you must have been so.
Yes.
Oh, I am so happy. In fact, I saw Marge Friedman last
Every
night
one
at
of
the
the kids are
concert.
going down to Florida.
And she said she saw Burl a couple of weeks ago. She said she's just beautiful and radiant, and she would know it's the same person. So I'm very happy. 2 years they've
They're all
been
in Chicago
married, and
area,
a wonderful
so-
boy. She's
Is he
just a
from
different
this
person.
area?
We went up to-
He is. He's
I
from
had a
Homewood.
client to
What's
see
his
in,
name?
Hyferman.
Northwood
They have
today,
AAA.
this morning.
Do you know
So
they have
she went with
AAA
me,
that
and
was
she-
over
his
near
name
you,
left
near
her,
the
so
James
river?
Strauss.
Oh,
They have to
yeah.
do it all
Big
the
yellow
time.
truck.
James
I do these all the time.
So where does she live?
She's living in her condo in
We
Park
spent-
Forest.
I'm so
Like last
Into
glad.
her condo.
You send her my regards.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
she and I always had a little
she's-
thing
she's-
going.
She's huh?
She and I always had a
I was small.
She's so happy and she's
What,
just
what
on
year
top
would that
of
have
the
been?
world. And I'm so
Sixties.
glad.
I'm
That
so
you
You
glad.
know,
Six-
they all
early
married
60s?
nice boys and I'm very
He was vice president.
grateful. And they all live in the area. Thank
Well, I
God.
was there already
Yeah.
since '56, but I.
It's all due to her.
smart.
It is.
You don't remember the name?
Dogs
Must
with
have
her.
been downtown.
He never was
Could
around.
be, I don't know.
Scott, he must have
She
been.
deserves 98% of the credit, I'll take 2%.
I
Yeah,
was very
Entitled
lucky
to
that
2%.
I don't know that you're entitled to that.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, I
man.
saw it that you
Listen, I mean, I know,
I
but
saw
that's,
that.
I asked for that.
Yeah,
I-
why did you do that?
I'd have told you how to negotiate that.
Oh, was the town that you left in Germany
got
about
to
the
laugh.
same size as Ligonier?
No, it's much smaller.
So Germantown was much smaller.
Oh, smaller than that?
Looking good,
God.
Manny.
No kidding.
Thank you. I'm intimidated.
What was the name of that
You
one?
better.
Glycerol.
Glycerol.
I bet it didn't have 500
What was
people.
that near?
That's
What was the bigger city that it was near?
Trier.
Lotzweiler, no?
Laufersweiler, it was,
Lotzweiler.
no, that wasn't near Glycerol, that was near the, it was probably 100 miles away from there, up in the mountains.
Oh.
This was in, right on the Mosel River.
The Mosel River goes east to west from Trier on the Luxembourg border, east to where it meets the Rhine. The Rhine comes north and south. Now, Glycerot and Trier are on the west end, and where his mother and where the Strauss family came from, where this Rhine met the Mosel, it's right in the mountain range. It's called Hunsrück Mountain Range, and Laufersweiler and where his mother was round, and we're just like 20 minutes apart.
Not that far.
Here's a thing from Ligonier. They had these special sidewalk days. I had an old picture of Sig in a cart.
Well, yeah.
They showed that, they saw
Oh,
that.
they saw it?
Nothing's
I didn't
new.
see
We
it.
still have sidewalks.
No. Can I see that when you're done?
No, it's not in that bunch.
Is it in this black one that has pictures?
Well, you and your brother are there, but there's no
Yeah.
cart there.
Well, we were
There is,
told
there
the
is
little
a
car.
sidewalk sale.
It was very handsome there, by the way.
Yeah, right
Huh?
here,
very
sidewalk
handsome.
sale or whatever.
Oh.
Had hair.
Yeah,
That's
here's
what I
Ligonier.
And you were
Yeah,
skinny,
there he is.
dark hair.
Did that sick pull in the cart?
Yeah.
You're talking about me.
No, his mother.
Yes, sweetie.
Thank
Well, his mother's standing behind him.
She
Behind
was a
him.
very nice-looking woman, you know, wasn't she? Very
Black
pretty.
hair, yeah.
Yeah, she was very, I mean, she's still a handsome
There's
woman, I
another
think.
picture of Sig and
She was
Ellen
very
there.
pretty.
You don't go to group.
You were cute.
I was young.
As a girl.
I was 19
$50 bonds.
Oh, it should be illegal.
I was 18.
Must be safe for it.
See, Ligonier High.
Why didn't you go to your class reunion?
Ellen, where'd you get these old pictures, Ellen?
When you got
I mean,
married.
the real old
I was
pictures.
18, I was going on 19, but I was 18.
Apparently she got those out of
And he had finished
swipes
college
them
at
from
that
people's albums.
point, you know, he was robbing the cradle, he really was. What did I know at that time? I don't know if I would have
Was
chosen.
anybody interested?
However, I really was never sorry.
Is it, who made the movie?
It was
Muncie Lakes.
interesting.
Look, you have it.
Yeah, yeah,
Who
Muncie
made it? The town of Ligonier on it.
All it shows is a lot of people walking around.
He's my
Bill
best
Why don't-
friend as well.
anybody want to
Mitch
see the
always
video?
felt that way.
Has it got anything about Jews?
It didn't have to be that way, but it
Port
it really
Mitchell,
is. And looking
anything
back,
about
I
sex?
probably, you know, would have done the same thing.
Because you can't have both, we know
Hey, it's too
that.
late to learn.
What movies?
Jews that
I
wanna learn by now.
I wanna see what I'm missing.
Jews come
Manny, you wanna have a stag party?
What's that?
You wanna have a stag party?
Yes, yes.
We have one, I'll invite you.
Please do.
I love this building.
Immediately I thought it was my dirty doodle, and I can't, I don't think we've lost it.
In Germany, that's our.
How come? Now, yeah, I've been saving that.
Oh, that's lovely.
Did he?
And then look at the beautiful rolling hills and farmland.
That's all vineyards back there.
Here's the wedding ceremony.
Celia, was Beth married when you were here?
Yeah.
No, she's
Oh,
been
his
married,
great
she was
grandmother.
married already,
Yeah.
not Barbara, Barbara's married.
So do they have covered bridges in the
Beth
area
is,
too?
I think
Beth
Beth
is
is
just
married,
right here.
They weren't Ligonier?
and Earl
Near
was
it.
2 years, so she was married.
They're mostly
She
in
was
the
married
southern
over
part of the
here.
state.
Brown County.
Brown
Said
County.
I think so.
I don't know, it's, you were gone 3 years and Beth is married for 3 years.
Where did she get an old picture?
She got married 3 years ago, in December.
Supposed to, must be, because Muncie Lakes is
She
there.
was married when you were
I
here.
left
I
February
can't see it from
10th.
this, but if you look at that other
I
map.
just wondered if you knew if the
She
middle.
lives in Chicago too.
No, Beth lives in Highland Park and Barbara lives in Wilmette now. They did live in Chicago.
I liked it when
Is
I
Barbara
went for
practicing?
Lafayette.
Yes,
Oh, you went there.
in Lincoln Park, I mean that area.
I liked it.
Oh, she's got a long wall.
Yes, she
Boy,
reversed
high
me.
regard
Says,
for what
you
he
know,
had to
it used to be the other way. She used to live near the hospital. Children's Memorial and such, and David had the hard time because he was at Lake Forest Hospital, and he used to go the other way, so now it's close for him, but further for her, but
It's
he's
about the
always
same distance for both now.
distance, but not time, because she hits the traffic in the morning, and he's got a piece of cake. Technically, it's the same distance in mileage, but it doesn't work that way.
No, that's not his grandmother.
Miles, David's much further, it's up to
No,
Greece.
I don't think, no, it isn't.
Here's the year, Lee, here's the year we went to Ligonier.
Oh, is it? I can't, look how time flies when you're having fun.
What year is it?
And I'm younger, I mean, I can't believe that's not.
1898.
There in Piedmont takes care of it.
1898, yes, Ellen must have gone.
When
there.
they
It'd be a nice,
had her
nice
in
trip,
there,
Dan.
Her owner
Let's
went
see.
put her to sleep. Because
Where's this, Germany?
so jealous.
Is this Germany? Is this Germany?
But can't put her to sleep.
Oh, how did you?
That was 8 years ago. Wasn't it? So I brought her home.
1898. It's clear as a bell, 1898. Trust me, Alice, trust
I
me.
had a little
This is
light
the
mom.
same house, I presume.
Beautiful dog.
Yes.
And then the years
50
later.
years difference.
What do they make this into?
A garage, yeah.
Modern design, see?
Must
It was
be
the butcher
a couple
shop.
of years.
I see.
Car is more important to have the car in
Look
there.
at that. Come here. It's like downtown. It's better to have that next to your house, the garage. than
Sig,
have
were
it
any
next
other
to-
families,
If you have a house
like in there in cattle, I mean?
Yeah, there was, there used to be, people named Salish, and when we came there,
They were cattle.
the man had died, but his widow lived.
You see modern
couple
design
blocks
over there,
from
now
us.
they had to have a place for the car.
She was so lonely there. Well, every night she'd come to our house and listen to the radio, and she'd sit there and smoke her cigarette.
This is in French.
You know, you see people
Yeah.
like they remember them.
Why is
She
it
had
in
a hard
French?
time walking. She had
Because it's 1808.
swollen legs all the time. She'd make it to our house to listen to Jack
And who
Berry
was
and listen
speaking
to-
French? I mean, who was writing?
Napoleon took over that part of
But
Germany.
it was not a popular type of location.
Oh, yeah, there were several big families.
See if I can read my French from 1,000 years ago.
The horse business was very big. They were, Jews were in the grain business, they were farmers.
Are you in it by yourself, or do you have a partner?
This is his relatives, this picture.
This is in Germany.
Yes.
What it is that's where we visited Germany in 1987, and the other picture is taken when his aunt was alive, who died in Germany. It had to be like 1930, maybe 50 years earlier.
And this fella here is Harry Sachs.
1937.
He came to Chicago too, and he worked for them. And he was just a terrific man. He was
Just a
a
minute.
gentleman. He was,
Did you ever go back there for a high school reunion or something
No.
like that?
No, he didn't.
no, I could have gone that time.
We'd have gone with you.
Yeah. There were only 16 in my class by the time he showed up.
She says we, I presume Annie, we didn't ask him whether he wanted to go or not.
She just tells me.
Can I read something that
Sig,
Sig
there were
didn't
some
read?
Saxes in the banking here too at LaSalle.
Can I read something?
Yes,
A
I-
chapter.
Exchange National, right, but then LaSalle bought them out.
Ellen, would you like to read
Yeah,
something?
white, that's.
Just
Ellen, I'd like to have
They'll
you read
stop.
something.
They'll stop talking.
You think so? It says, this is in a book that I copied at the Ligonier Library. It's talking about the history of the town Ligonier. And I copied this chapter because it's called Religion in Ligonier. And it says, churches of yesterday and today. And the opening paragraph says, Ligonier churches. Though the Jewish temple has not been active in Ligonier during the past 50 years, the following account from the Centennial Book is included as it was such an important part of the history of the town of Ligonier. The temple was called, how did you pronounce it? Here, Ahavas Shalom Congregation. The congregation was organized in September 1867 when a synagogue was built on Main Street south of the Henry Green residence. The first rabbi was Jacob Bound, who officiated from 1867 to 1871, followed by Rabbi Samuel Strauss until the spring of '88, requiring better quarters. Did you read this? Bigger
Can I
quarters.
interrupt for 1 second? Was that Samuel Strauss by any chance, a relative of one of those original
Could
Strauss
be.
businessmen?
One
And he
S.
became a rabbi. Well,
I doubt
don't
it.
know.
I doubt
I
it.
doubt it.
A lot was purchased from A.C. Jones and the present temple built thereon, the old building be moved to the rear of the new structure. The dedication exercises were held on September 5th, 1889, with the Rabbi of Cincinnati presiding. I presume that was Stephen, no. Weiss? Isaac Mayer Weiss. Music was furnished by the Ligonier Military Band.
That's interesting, isn't it?
I remember we used to, when we came there, we had services just on the holidays, and they would have a student rabbi kicking all the time.
Oh,
Every year was
itinerant
different.
rabbis.
Mhm.
Oh, one of them we knew, who was a member of our temple, which one? Wasn't it? Or was that in Ann Arbor?
And at one time, well, when we lived there, a Jewish family moved in there. He was, their father worked in the garment factory there. And he had two sons. And one of them became a rabbi, and he came here to Park Forest one time as a substitute rabbi.
That's it. Oh.
He was in Beth Sholem, and I liked him.
Nice guy?
Oh, yeah. His name was Greenbaum. I don't know if you remember him or not. Dark hair.
Greenbaum?
When did he come?
When we were in between rabbis.
Oh, with that year?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean between 85 and 80?
Even one of the renter rabbis.
Yeah.
See, Ligonier still has a high school alumni reunion every year in August. Anybody want to see anything else about Ligonier? They do good PR work.
Yeah, they sure do.
It's amazing.
Are they currently just as active in this PR work as they were 2-3 years ago?
They have quite a few functions there, yeah.
And it's still really plugging away for visitors to come to town.
And they're
Chamber of
stressing the
Commerce.
Jewish part of it too. I mean,
Right, of course, well, that's one way to do it.
But they don't call their team, the Jews or anything, do they?
The
The Fighting Yids.
Red Raiders. No, they don't have a high school in Ligonier anymore. They consolidated it with two other schools.
Oh.
Old towns.
Two other villages, still communities.
So they can just go,
This is the
yeah,
alley.
yeah.
See this alley?
Ligonier on the map.
By
Earring jumped off.
Here's, see that tree? This woman, her son went to school with, I remember, she was a beautiful woman when she was younger.
Oh, this is what I was going to read you. There's a little article in the Ligonier paper. They saved all the issues and they retyped it, and I pulled out 3 articles about the Khans. This is about his uncle, Sal Khan. It says, July 1934, Sal Khan store to be remodeled. In this issue of the Banner, which is the newspaper, appeared a 2-page advertisement for the Khan department store announcing a remodeling commencing Saturday, July 14th. The purpose of the sale is to reduce the present stock prior to remodeling the sale room. Much of the merchandise is priced at cost, blah, 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 and the latest in ladies' ready-to-wear, as well as other high-grade merchandise. At the close of the sale, the sales room will undergo radical changes, and it talks about the changes. Mr. Khan wishes to make his store one of the most attractive places to trade in Ligonier, with the addition of the sales space to be added. The balcony at the rear of the store will be used for display of rugs, draperies, etc., with the full line.
Who is this now?
Uncle Solly.
Oh,
Remember
Uncle
Uncle
Sal.
Sal?
Oh, sure, I remember Uncle Sal. I do. He was a nice
Mr.
man.
Khan has covered large trading territories with circulars announcing this sale. Then on April 21st, 1938, it says, death of the father, Isaac Khan, his grandfather, of Glycerat, Germany, died in the New York City Saturday. Isaac Khan, 75, of Glycerat, Germany, father of Sal Khan of this city, died Saturday morning at the French hospital in New York City. Death was caused by the rough voyage from Germany. Mr. Khan arrived with Mr. and Mrs. Herman Khan and twin sons Siegfried and Manfred and Leon Khan, who was Sig's uncle. They arrived in New York City Friday from Germany. The body was brought here Tuesday afternoon and interment was made in the Jewish cemetery. Rabbi Shulman of South Bend officiated. Surviving are the 4 sons, Sal, Herman, and Leon of this city, and Sigmund Kahn of Chicago, and 3 daughters, 1 in France, 2 in Germany, and those never made it out.
They didn't mention Moritz?
No.
You came by train from there?
New York.
And the body was on the train with you?
You got here.
And then
Yeah, we were quite an oddity when we arrived in New York, from New York to Ligonier. There was a big crowd waiting for it just to see what we looked like, you know, coming off the trains.
Really?
Yeah.
And I showed
They were there watching the trains going in
Oh,
both
it's back.
directions. Somebody really got out.
Did you speak any English there?
that was the thing. That was the thing to do. That was an activity in town.
That was hard for me. We got there, I was 5 and I started school that fall.
Talk
I
louder.
didn't speak English, and that was really difficult.
You're staying after school.
Yeah, but look how fast you learn, look how fast you were able to speak English. In 6 months to a year, you were speaking.
You know, Lou, in those days, they didn't have bilingual classes.
So how'd you
Oh, I
feel about
started
it?
to
So
say
in those
this.
days, people wanted to learn American, and
Yeah, that's the point I'm trying to make.
were you focused
I
on
started
trying to
in
get
first
a
grade in
job
Olympia.
in Florida? And
But
everyone
they
wanted her
brought
to be
the
bilingual. She called me and said, do I
No,
live in the United
it's
States?
been on you all this time.
No, I have to speak Spanish to
It's
get
been
a
on
job.
When we
Yeah.
first came
Is
there,
that something?
we lived on top of a store in some small apartment, you know, it wasn't very great living there. I mean, we were on the
Seal?
3rd floor of the apartment.
And you and Manfred
Florida,
always had a room together.
California,
Were you friends?
the Internal Revenue Service is distributing
He was,
forms in
and
Spanish.
it was
March.
very reserved, you know, quiet.
You believe?
You weren't.
More than,
It was
More quiet than C? You're kidding. So he never said anything?
You know.
We went to New York for a visit our relatives
Still not
there, and then we went to Chicago.
Who was
Can I read you one more article
Brother.
from the
His twin
newspaper?
I'm
Nat,
listening.
Yes.
anybody listening?
Yes.
Natalie, you definitely
October
stay.
23rd, 1941. Last week, Jimmy and Jackie Garland and the Kahn twins, Manfred and Siegfried, sold newspapers and have turned over the grand sum of $1.63 to Mr. Lewis Cook for the Noble County, I can't read
Red
it,
Cross.
Red Cross.
We were patriotic.
That was in the Ligonier newspaper?
Isn't that something?
Sing, do you have
I
any
should bring
memory
you a
of,
copy of the Ligonier
do you
picture.
have any memory of becoming an American? Was there a ceremony?
Did
or-
you have to go back and dig those out of the old papers?
Yeah.
No, the museum, everything's at the museum.
All that stuff was in the museum?
My goodness.
Gosh, your history.
Oh, sir.
They have books.
No, they're not in Spanish.
They have pictures hanging there of the graduating class.
We have a
Still here.
Nat, listen to this.
They have pictures there of all the graduating classes. And I'm up there.
What I did was I went ahead from the library, he was visiting someone, I went ahead and I saw all these stacks of every graduation from 1918 to the present time of Ligonier High School. I said, you have the graduating class of 1930, I forgot what it was, 1951. And they said, it's in there. So I went on the BEMA and I looked through all these pictures. And when Sid came in, I had it right up front. It was a huge thing with his picture.
I'll be there.
I never knew about this.
Graduated high school when I graduated from Purdue, 1951.
You're old.
Now, by the way, the 2 boarding
I have it
houses that are in Ligonier, it's interesting. One is called the Minuet. It's the home of Jacob Strauss. And the other one is Solomon Myers. They're still in competition.
Still the same way, yeah. Nothing's
Isn't it interesting?
Yeah.
The only 2 bed and breakfasts.
2 bed and breakfast.
It is
They don't
nice.
shoot on each other's windows.
How do you
They
like
don't own them
that?
anymore.
Well, they're resting
Why
in
does it
peace.
say Philipina Strauss
stay in that
or
White House.
Babette Strauss?
Her Babette was her, like you, what's your real name?
Shirley.
Okay. She didn't like Filipina, so she called herself Babette.
I see. Well, I like Babette better too.
Well, that's
I don't
a
like
stretch
Lupita
of
either.
the imagination.
Oh,
I thought you were gonna say she called herself Phil or something like that.
Filipina.
Oh, that's wonderful.
She called herself Babette.
Oh, I told my wife.
I like the
Does
name
anybody
Babette.
want to see
Yes.
in Glycerot? This
There's a
first
song
picture.
In the cemetery, I like
This
that
first
name.
picture is the old house
Yes.
in Germany before it was added onto, and what the
Picture.
town looks like
Picture.
along the Mosel
Picture.
River. The second picture
Picture.
is of Glycerot houses
He
by
was
the
on
river.
one side of the
His
river.
uncle's restaurant and hotel. The restaurant's on the first
There's
floor, the
probably
hotel's on the
something
second
there.
floor, and the inside of the restaurant. And it's still as beautiful as ever.
We were back.
Some of them
Were
are,
we back there?
Still
We
a
were back there
restaurant?
in 87.
It's still a restaurant in that little town.
See, all
That's cute.
So it
survived.
Does
Some
the
part of the
family
family's
continue
in
running it, the
Argentina?
same family by any chance?
Oh, no.
How could
No.
that be?
It's a different
Not
owner.
there.
No, not their family.
And this is
Like,
Westminster,
whoever took
CA,
it
do they mean California
over. The
or?
restaurant, whoever took it
Yeah.
over.
Oh,
Long time,
isn't
same
this
family.
gorgeous?
running it.
These are all vineyards.
It says Westminster, CA, do they mean?
Well, this is like, third cousins of Sig. I mean, I took Simon Strauss and went down, and I went collaterally a lot of ways. I've got 1,000 names on my computer.
1,000.
And I've got a whole file folder of names to put in it.
All these are relatives, someone's belonging to?
Distant.
Well, they may be distant,
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah, they're all relatives. We have relatives around the world. The interesting thing is
Everybody probably does.
When
I mean, they
I-
all do,
yeah.
they just don't know who they are.
when I was in Florida visiting somebody who's related to me, they had out-of-town visitors from, I guess it was Australia. Where is she
You
from?
got
No,
fabulous
from the
staff on it.
Netherlands.
Everybody
And she
knows
said,
you.
Ellen Kahn, this is Ellen
Actually, this is
Kahn.
not, she's got more
She
than
was
that.
born Ellen Kahn, but her married name was Vander.
I hate to give this up,
but
but
her
I'm
real
looking it up.
birth name was Ellen Kahn.
Here's a picture of the house in between the other
Yeah.
two pictures.
Oh.
Different stages, you can see.
Okay, we don't have the garage yet.
No, but you don't have the door here that was leading to the meat
No,
shop.
no,
You have the window, then
Yeah.
it came
It's
to that.
interesting
Yeah,
how she
so you have
did
3
it.
different
Really
Can I take a
stages.
few minutes to talk about something else?
Are we done?
Yeah.
Very good,
Sig,
Alan.
thank
Good
you.
job,
This
Sig.
Yes, that was
Wonderful.
pretty interesting.
Yeah, it was
Very
very good.
interesting, Sig. Very
What are
good.
you gonna do, Jerry?
Well, I just wanted to tell you about a very interesting experience that I had 2 weekends ago when I visited a Reconstructionist Kala meeting of the congregations, the Reconstructionist temples in Havaram, visiting my cousin up in Madison, Wisconsin. And at that time, I was also looking for a spiritual experience just before my operation. And it was very fascinating with the, there's kind of a Hasid joyousness in their singing and their services. And I spoke about them before in terms of just being interested in the some of the differences that my cousin's been telling me about in their group up there, the university town. And one of the interesting things was that this particular group was started by Hannah Rosenthal, who's Frank's daughter. And she was holding services for Jews who were not affiliated up there. She studied for the rabbinate herself, but didn't go through with it. And she is now chairman of the Democratic Party of the state of Wisconsin, and advisor. She was campaign manager for Clinton. Her husband is county supervisor up there. And
She's the one we met in the store.
is that right?
She was working in the store. Oh, that's right.
Awesome. Do they have a rabbi at that synagogue, Jerry?
No, no. They meet in a Unitarian church. And
Do they plan to have a rabbi, or do they not have a rabbi because?
and it's interesting because they're all into it. I mean, they lead the services between them and my cousin, Jackie Kaplan. It was just a marvel to watch in her leading services and in song.
Were you here when Walter and Gretchen brought us material from the Evanston Reconstructionists?
No, I wasn't, but I met the Evanston folks. There were folks from Cleveland. There were a number of rabbis that came from their seminary. And
They have a seminary?
yeah, they have their own school in Cleveland. And
Picture of the Eden?
so anyway, I wrote a little toast to them, and I would like to pass it out to you. But the big question to me was, when they learned that I was a member of a Reformed congregation, is what was I doing there?
There or here?
At their
Did
college.
you say spying?
That was one of my smart aleck answers. I was spying for my Havara group. And then I kind of opened up and talked to him about the fact that I was looking for some inspiration, that I had been interested in what they were doing. And one of the big topics actually was about the various congregations that were there as to whether they should limit their size. They seemed to think that anything over 60 members was really getting to be too much. And
Are they meeting in homes? Is that what they?
no, they meet at churches. They meet at the Unitarian Church.
Do they have
And they
Torah?
also, oh yeah, gee, and it was joyous. It was really something. I mean, it was lovely.
Did you have your spiritual experience then?
I really did.
Good.
Yeah, it was very meaningful to me.
So it's actually a reconstructionist
Right.
congregation.
Well, what was different about their service, Jerry?
Well,
No.
they seem to be coming from the same place in their thinking. They was almost all of the real ritual was in Hebrew. They seem to be very fluent in Hebrew. Their poems and a lot of stuff that was mixed in was not at all from necessarily Jewish sources, but just really inspired poetry and interesting writing.
Yeah,
So
now
they
I've got
seem
it.
to reach out into the larger community.
Much Hebrew?
Pardon?
Was a lot of it Hebrew?
Yeah, well, the regular prayers were.
Was most of the service in Hebrew? Did they use Sidurim? It's very similar to the synagogue I belong to in East Lansing, which made me very homesick for our congregation.
Was it Reconstructionist?
Well, I don't know. There's a large congregation in East Lansing. And they have a conservative, kind of orthodox service early, and then they have a reformed service. And this group broke away from that congregation. It's like 20 years old, and they're pretty much academics from the university, a lot of professional people, psychologists, social workers, some doctors, but most of the physicians in the medical community belonged to that other congregation. And they didn't have a rabbi, they bought a school, and I don't know how many years they've had it, but they have a sanctuary. They do a lot themselves, very educated congregation, and they have a marvelous religious school. Their service is primarily in Hebrew, and I, as you know, read Hebrew very well, and I know the service, and I come from a conservative background. I'm not standing up to lecture, I can't sit this long. But they conducted all their own service. They were very, very fluent in Hebrew. It amazed me the number of people that they had in the congregation who could really read the Torah fluently, very beautifully. But I didn't enjoy the service. You know, when I was raised in
You're used
a
to
more Orthodox background, I just didn't enjoy the service as much as I did our service, where I think a lot of it has to do with Ellen, that she draws the congregation into the service as a family and as participants. I missed that very much. I participated in services. I had aliyahs, I participated in the High Holy Day services. But I didn't enjoy it as much. But they are now considering getting a rabbi. They are looking to getting a rabbi next year because they're finding that there is that need, especially for the educational component for the children. Children need the
Yeah,
education.
what was terrific was that they had their children there, and for the most part, the children were really into it. I mean, it was, you know, quite exciting to see the children enjoying it, and they were doing creative stuff. They did a role play skit where they played Moses, and it was sort of an original presentation. And
Wasn't the board of Jewish education that was in Park Forest, I don't know if it's still there?
They run.
They were Reconstructionists.
No, they weren't.
They weren't?
No.
They were.
No, the services that they have on high holidays, they use the Reconstructionist prayer
Oh,
book.
that's why, I mean, I had asked once and
We
it's-
were members of that.
and they, but they're not
They were-
Reconstruction.
No,
I thought they
no,
were
they
some-
just ran a Sunday school, that's all.
That I know, but I
But
thought
they-
they were Reconstructionists, was there?
They just use the Reconstructionist prayer book
I
on the
see.
high holidays. They're not, they were nothing in particular.
I see. I thought I years ago had asked, and somebody said they were Reconstructionists. I
That's
said, "What's
probably
that?"
because of the prayer book.
Probably.
They were ecumenical.
I see. Didn't know that.
Is Jackie Kaplan your niece?
no, she's a first cousin once removed, very close to her father, who's my age.
That's neat, that you can do that, Jerry.
Yeah, Ellie and I were both going to go up there, and she honked out last minute, and I didn't want to get, this was a really cold day, you know. So I decided not to attempt to drive. I wanted to be sure I didn't catch cold or anything before the operation. And it was strenuous, but I attended to a sick young lady, took her to the hospital, who was one of the congregants, and so I was doing some social work out there. And she was a student from the seminary.
Yeah.
And had some very meaningful conversations with various people who came there. I was kind of interested in ethical wills and talked a little bit about some of the stuff we've been talking about wanting to do here. So
Jerry,
everybody
excuse me,
joined
do you
in.
remember when we met you and Ellie downtown, bumped into you and
At the Hilton.
Hilton? Lou and I had just come from a discussion
Was
at
that an
Curtis
ethical
College
will?
on ethical wills.
Was that Nathaniel
Stanford.
Stanford?
He's a professor at the
Were
college.
you impressed with him?
He
I
was
want
a
to get in
speak-
touch with him.
Yes, he's a very warm.
It was nice.
I misunderstood you. I didn't realize it was ethical wills that
Yeah, that
we were
was the
talking
subject.
about.
I have the book.
Do you?
Mhm.
Because I've just sent for it. Okay.
Well, so what's an ethical will?
Just sort of trying to communicate with your, as I understand it, with your grandchildren and
Yeah, well.
whoever about your own, the values and the
Right, it's a will to
notions
be
that
written
you
while you're well.
guided
time
your
that
own
you're feeling-
life.
That you're feeling well about values and not wishes on, not deathbed wishes or any of that sort of thing, but,
And not
But
legal
just-
things.
no, not legal things,
no,
not,
it's
this
not
I'd be
Material.
ideas and values
bequeathing
and
values,
motivations.
not jewelry, in
Interesting.
other words, you know.
I sort
I
of
like
been,
the
I've
idea.
been sort of writing about that for my, you know, when my grandchildren are old enough to be able to read this stuff. I think it might be of interest to them.
It's a mitzvah, by the way,
I
to
would love-
prepare one of those.
I'd love to have had something.
I like
for-
the idea
My
of it.
uncle, my sixth uncle Sally, I've got him on that tape upstairs, and then I'll fast forward to Sid. Lee,
Yes.
do you remember Uncle Sal?
Oh, sure.
Come on, I'll show you the tape.
I have a
Maybe
Give up my job here as a director?
topic for